Call to order the meeting of the Yolo Transportation District for March 9th, 2026, and we will do roll call first.
Hey, City Winters,
Here.
Yolo County, here. West Sacramento,
Here.
Davis, here. Woodland.
Here. All right, we have a forum. We will be moving into closed session, but before moving into closed session, I'd like to know if there's any public comment on closed session. Seeing none in the room, seeing none online, we're gonna break until we come out of closed session. There you go. Yeah, I think that's where that was.
Yeah, I know, why not you listen to that? All that was like, it started here.
The scene in the chair is pretty. Oh, it's that. Let's just put it over here. Yes. And we will be moving into item 3 of the agenda, approval of the agenda. Does anybody see any changes that they would like?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Director Harris. And we have a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes.
While our substitute clerk is working on that.
Good job.
I just wanted to thank Director Planning, Brian.
He's got them. We need to do roll call on that. The one thing I had to do.
And again, we have nothing to report. Now we're moving into comments from the public regarding matters that are on the consent calendar or items not on the agenda but within the purview of Yolo Transportation District. Please note the board is prohibited from discussing these items that aren't on the agenda. Do we have public comment tonight? I see Mr. Hirsch. Come on up,
I thank you for all your hard work. Under that closed session, you decided whether you were gonna bring forth a lawsuit or something. I assume what the lawsuit's about will be disclosed. Certainly the content we're assuming and will be disclosed at some level early on. I don't just trust you, I just, somewhere along the line, you should be able to reveal what's going on, at least at the highest level. So I have this request. You missed public comment last time on my Zoom in, so you noted that. And I just got back from a 5-day civil rights trip to the South, which my wife kind of quite dragged me on it, but I went through, but it was just really moving about how social change happens and how difficult it is and how the institutions and power structures struggle with it because there are people on both extremes and they're pushing and pulling, and how people in the middle are fraught, and also how people on the streets create good things but also create difficulty, and people get in the middle get punished. It happens. You encompass it all. That's all that goes on there. And I also note the Montgomery bus boycott. I'm in favor of public transit, but they had a private bus company then. And the only reason the boycott worked was because it was a private bus company and the public couldn't continue subsidized, because the town fathers of Birmingham who filled in swimming pools would have kept running the empty bus, they wouldn't have cared. But the private bus company couldn't stand the losses of not having fares. That there was and oh, by the way, it's against the law to boycott it. You gotta call it something else. That's how pervasive the town fathers are in terms of suppressing public engagement and public protest. So thank you for listening to that little story. I think it's a profound thing. If you can take a trip to the South, it will just move and shake.
I appreciate your comments. Are there any other public comments online or in person? Thank you so much. We're gonna be moving on to the consent calendar. We have, items 6A through 6D on the consent calendar. Does anybody want to change or remove anything for discussion? Seeing none, I will look for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Director Burke, a second, and a second by Mara Vega. Director Vega, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed, seeing none, motion passes unanimously. We're moving on to the regular calendar tonight. We have, item number 7 is about the transit operating and capital budget cost allocation workshop, and it will be presented by our Chaz Pacheco. Welcome, Chaz.
Good evening, board, members of the public and staff. Chas Rodrigo, Director of Finance and Administration. We're doing our workshop number 3 today. So, slide.
We also, our IT person is out sick as well, so thank you, Daisy, for filling in. All right, looks like we got it full screen. We're firing on all cylinders.
So all the slides are in your packet there also.
Got it.
I don't know if I have any. No.
If we want, we could take the items out of order while we get we pull the slide back, if that's amenable to the board. People do like a few minutes to do that. So, yeah, is that an option?
Let's proceed with the items that we have, and if we need to come back to something, we'll do that.
Just to give the team, I think we dropped the ball as far as making sure that Chaz's slides are in we have 2 separate slide decks happening. So, why don't we proceed with, since I think we've got the slide up for the next agenda item, which is our transit operations RFP informational update. We can present that in first, and then we'll come back to the budget workshop.
All right, we're proceeding to item number 7, transit operating and, nope. Not that,
Sorry.
Informational update, item 8.
Great, thank you so much. So I'll be presenting this item. So as you know, we have a transit operations contract. Our request for proposals is underway. The timeline you see here and it's also in this slide packet. It's just a reminder of kind of what our overall process looks like. So we approved the new RFP. The board did in November and was released then. Proposals were due on February 6th. And then ultimately we're hoping to bring you the contract to award in April. And so what the purpose of this item is to just kind of share a couple of where we are, what's happening, and give you an update in advance of bringing you back the final award next month. So next slide. So a couple of key milestones. We had our pre-proposal conference and facility tour in January. We had over 30 people representing 6 different firms attend, which was a really fantastic turnout. We were really pleased to see the interest from so many firms. We didn't have enough chairs in the room. It was exciting. 4 proposals were submitted, deemed complete and scored. So all 4 were high quality proposals that met all the proposal requirements. And they were scored by our RFP evaluation panel, which includes representatives from our YoloTD member jurisdictions, as well as Unitrans, Uber Transit, and SACOG staff. And then just last week, we held interviews. Our evaluation panel interviewed all 4 proposers last week. And going on to the next slide. So what are our next steps? Our next steps are we're going to be requesting best and final offers, which is basically kind of updated cost proposals from the highest scoring proposers. We're going to be asking for those over the course of the next week, and checking references, talking to public agencies that use these transit operators, have their clients, to really get a sense of their performance record with clients that are like us. And then contract negotiation, where we finalize the terms and conditions. So that's kind of where we are in the process right now. If you go to the next slide, I just want to share some high-level observations and themes, like what are we seeing, what are we hearing in this process? Now, obviously, I want to be mindful about what I say because we're in the middle of procurement, and I, don't want to say anything that is inappropriate. But I will say a couple of the key observations: technology tools. There's just a lot of technology-driven innovation tools that we're hearing about that really touch every single aspect of transit operations. From maintenance to customer service to operations to labor management. There's some really interesting things happening out there with technology that I think are really kind of revolutionizing what we're seeing in transit operations. So that's exciting. There's been a big emphasis on liability and risk management. As we've talked about before, there's really broad changes happening in the insurance market for transportation that are driving a lot of cost uncertainty. Our insurance costs have gone up dramatically this year because there's just a lot of things happening with liability and litigation in this space. And so as part of that, we're definitely seeing some significant cost increases for our operators, our bidders as well, when it comes to their liability. And then industry consolidation and disruption. So we have seen a lot of consolidation in the industry in recent years. There's really a small number of large firms that now dominate the industry, but we're also seeing some smaller disruptors who are seeing this as an opportunity to kind of get in and gain market share. And I would say with this, but we're seeing a little bit of both. So it's very interesting to see, kind of what the industry looks like right now and where it may be headed. So I'm going to stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may all have. To the extent possible, while also making sure we are careful about our procurement. So I'll stop there.
Do you have any general questions on the item? Moving to my right and left, staying around.
Okay.
Do we have public comment on our contract, our item number 8, or the RFP for transportation component?
Participate. I am starting the timer, 3 minutes.
Thank you. This is, as I've said, the meetings past, probably the most sensitive item that will be voted upon, and the date is coming toward April 13th to do that. A lot of it, that's been my concern with the contract does come down to the cost and the affordability of it, and whether the next thing after that to be voted on, the short-range transit plan recommendations, which I understand there was a meeting today that staff is attending in Davis, presenting on that. Having a city commission meeting that I am serving on and attended last week in Sacramento, I was asked, hey, did they get those short-range transit plan recommendations approved? I said, not yet. There still needs to be another round of outreach to the jurisdictions that are paying into the service to get a little bit more clarity about the 80, 90, and 100% or beyond service recommendations. And a lot of what can be offered or afforded is going to come out of the decision on the transit operations contract service. So the two are very closely related and tied hand in hand. I know our city has said, yeah, please make sure that Richards Boulevard, North 7th Street, and the alignment traveling through Capitol Mall is adopted and approved for alignment purposes, because it helps to avoid closures during major events. And when the university gets the AI program and the public policy program that we're looking to get the new or the old state buildings renovated into a downtown campus, folks have a one-seat ride if that route alignment proposed at past meetings is approved, hopefully by the middle of June. So those are the concerns about the operations contract. Now, I just want to put them on the table. I know we have a big vote on April 13th. I'm curious to see how that staff report and slides will be presented, because that will kind of figure out what we're all going to say. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Michael. Seeing no other public comments, would we be moving on to item 9 or yeah.
So please don't see me not asking questions as not being interested. I just want to make sure that we don't inadvertently ask or say something that could be an issue for the proposals. So I just want to know that, and I'm assuming everyone, same for everyone.
Oh, yeah. Less is more, right?
In this case, yeah.
I think we're all very interested and also know our role.
I appreciate that, thank you. So how are we doing on the tech?
We're good on, so we're waiting on the slide.
Are we on the slide links? So
Do you want to move
Well, I
to,
mean, hold on, don't we have, like,
we have administrative,
so we have packets of the slides, can we just hand a packet to? Unless
That's
it's
true.
major notes that are, we have.
do we have anyone watching online?
We do have one person that's not staffed.
Okay, so when you're having challenges with tech to show
That's
the
true.
slides, but we do literally have a packet of slides, and we all have slides, and the public can see them too. We can give Alan a packet of slides. That-
Yeah, I don't think we have any of those, but we can.
We can
There's a lot of
here if
real
you want.
challenges in the world. This is not, there's a lot of real challenges in the world. This is not work.
I'm happy to give you mine. We can share.
We got it, yeah.
Go.
There you go. All right. Thank you.
Not one. Thank you.
Whatever.
all right.
We're gonna share.
Just give it.
Yeah. It's coming, it's like
Could we inform Ms. Rodrigo that we're ready for her presentation on our operating and capital budget?
Okay, well, while that's happening, news alert, Representative Kevin Kylie just switched his affiliation to independent.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Mm.
That's rich. Yeah, exactly.
Won't say anything else, it came through on the watch.
We'll just pretend like.
Yeah.
History.
Oh, we can-
Okay.
Never happened. He didn't.
He's an independent now.
And he's running in my district.
What did you do?
There are no politics, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, sure. Oh, we can.
No, I think George Warren that Thomas.
In concern for time, we're gonna go ahead and move to item number 9. I would like to ask if we have any board member comments for item number 9. Do we have any board comments for tonight? All right, we will reserve 9B and D after, yes?
Oh, but do you want me to add?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, I'll just, so I can report for CARTA, because I think this is something that, we've asked about, that we continue to work, on finding our executive director. Actually, Chapman, do you want to talk about that? The executive director search and just where we're at in the timeline? I just put him on the spot, I can say what I know. Oh, okay, well, I mean,
Yeah, we're in the process of working through our executive director search for CARTA. Timeline, we're hoping to have somebody in that seat in July. July to
excellent.
August, yeah,
Yeah, that's, check.
doing our work.
We can finish item 9 with our executives report, trans staff report, and long range calendar while just bringing it up.
Did you get the link, Daisy? Just sent it to you.
If not, we all have a copy.
Are you sent it on my phone?
I put it in Teams. Okay, so, sure, so do you want me to go ahead and do
Sure.
executive director's report?
Sure.
Okay, great. All right, well, first, well, he's not here in the room. I know he's he's here somewhere. Our new IT system support technician, John Michael Bennett, is here and has been working behind the scenes. Second week on the job, he's jumping in to help with the board meeting. We're very pleased that he's here. Some more good news. Last week, the Safe Hub Transportation Committee approved $1 million in funding for our Woodland Transfer Point project as part of the Mobility Zone project. It goes to the SACOG Board of Directors next week. And if approved by the SACOG Board, this will allow us to finalize design and begin and fully fund construction with the goal of launching service at the new transfer point in summer of 2027.
Excellent.
Very exciting. We participated in a Caltrans-led VMT mitigation discussion along with some of the other VMT mitigation providers. That was hosted by Caltrans, kind of after we had that workshop where we had Tej Patel from Caltrans was here, really to talk about the status of the VMT mitigation program and what's happening with that. It was a really good meeting. We all got caught up with each other on what's going on, and I think they're planning to bring an update back to the Carter board and this board very soon. So I just wanted to report that was a very positive outcome. The SACOG regional funding round is going to be ramping up, and we are working internally and with our partners to identify projects for the upcoming funding round. And then, as was mentioned, one of our public commenters mentioned, we at the last board discussion about the short-range transit plan, you all asked us to go out and do an additional round of outreach to gather input on our service reduction scenarios. To accomplish this, we've worked with each jurisdiction to kind of identify an approach that works well for them. So late last month, we met with Woodland City staff to review the recommendations for Woodland. Last week, we presented to the West Sacramento Transportation and Mobility Commission to get their feedback. And tonight, right at this very moment, Lola Torney is presenting to the Davis Transportation Commission to get their feedback. And then we're working to
We
schedule.
hope that meeting ends tonight. We hope that meeting will end tonight.
And we are also working to schedule a presentation to the Winters Yolo County 2x2 to talk about the recommendations that impact both Winters and Elyria.
That's perfect.
And that concludes my meeting report.
Well, that was excellent. Do we have a transcript report?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Current operator status 77. We currently have 8 in class. We have a new class that's starting March 30th, and we're hoping to have 9. Hopefully those folks are already licensed, so it's a quicker process for them. And then next week, we'll be celebrating our staff with employee appreciation.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. All right. Do we want to cover the long range calendar? We might as well, knock out number 9.
Sure, let's do it. All right. I don't know if we have the slide up, so we'll just go ahead and look at the last page of your packet.
Yeah, it was
So we have a very busy couple of months coming up. We will be, there's plenty of copies of this. This one that goes back there. No, those are all gone.
None of those are in that.
I want to have mine.
We can,
Well, it's also in
have
the packet.
Just like it.
There you go.
Yes.
It's identical to what's in the board packet as well. So, in April, we will be approving the transit operations contract or awarding the transit operations contract. We'll also be hearing from Brian and his team with an overview of the multimodal program, talking about the Yolo commute program expansion, one of our VMT mitigation strategies for YoloTD. Preliminary work, starting to talk about our work plan for the next fiscal year. In May, of course, Chaz and her team will be presenting the budget, the first read of the budget in May. And you'll also be seeing the draft final plan for YATSE, the Yolo Active Transportation Corridors program, and taking action, we hope, on Yolo commute program expansion. And then in June, adoption of the budget. We have optimistically here approved MOU for the Sacramento UCA. We'll see where we are with that process at that time. And we also do want to come back to you with the SRTP service level recommendations. At that point, we will have our contract with our new transit operator in place. We'll have done our outreach, and we hope to be able to make a decision about service levels going forward. So that's our long range calendar. Any questions or anything board members would like to add to the long range calendar?
I don't want to add anything to the calendar, just say these are really important items, and April is what's going to happen in April. Do we have public comment on the item number 9? Okay. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. On item number 9, thank you for bringing the long-range calendar. Looks like that's a very busy final fiscal quarter
Yeah.
for fiscal year 25-26. Bringing the budget and the service recommendations all on Monday, June 8th, Monday after Election Day for the California primary election, which is June 2nd. That's a lot of stuff in the first eight days of June, let alone that quarter. But I did want to say, and I just learned from what you said tonight about the Woodland transfer point matter going to the SACOG board. And that was something that we've worked in this room for a long time, from being very vocal and outspoken, not to have the Gateway as a transit center due to its location in Woodland, really focusing on downtown Woodland and coming together united on Main Street between 5th and 6th as a transfer point. So I would like to, Madam Chair, make a motion to endorse the transfer point location on Main between 5th and 6th. And hopefully that will be something we could be united on, that it would be in the SACOG staff report, that they would get for their board a message coming from this board that we are united on that topic in downtown Woodland. It's going to be a very critical and key piece in the short range transit plan that will be adopted for the recommendations back at this board in June. And hopefully a message of unity from this room to a much larger room of 6 counties and 20 plus cities says a lot to a board that's making a decision on both a local and a regional level on something affecting transit service at a region-wide scale. So that's why I put that motion on the table tonight to adopt this in unison and in unity so that they could see that in writing that is happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your concept there. We're gonna move on then. We're seeing no other public comment. All right. Yeah. We're going back to item number 7. Welcome back, Chuck.
Thank you for your patience. Okay. So budget number 3 on the we'll keep moving. This is our outline of topics for budget workshop 3 today. We're going to do a brief recap of transit funding sources that we covered in workshop number 1. Number 2 would be the operating budget structure, then the budget development process, then use and allocation of funding sources. And this one we actually removed capital and planning. So we're going straight into the status of unrestricted funds and capital reserves, then post-COVID historical financial data, and then future impacts on operating the operating budget. So the goal for today's workshop is to provide transparency into how the district utilizes funding and develops its budget while giving a little more context on operating trends, funding levels, and capital needs. We also hope this discussion helps inform future policy and funding decisions. So our first is the recap of transit funding sources workshop number 1. Next slide, Daisy. So we had a few guest speakers covering mostly STA and LTF funds and what they can be used for. So 2 of the primary local funding sources are the STA and LTF. LTF supports about 34.5%, and STF supports 10.5% of our operating budget, making it one of the most significant funding sources for transit service. Both funding sources are restricted, and must be used for specific purposes under the California transportation statutes. STA funds are generally used to support transit operations and capital expenses, while LTF can also be used for transit operations, capital, and planning. So state law requires that transit needs within the county be met before those funds can be used for other local transportation purposes. The requirement is often referred to as the unmet transit needs process. So historically, a portion of the LTF funds collected countywide are allocated to support YoloTD's transit services, and approximately half of the LTF funds are distributed to local jurisdictions for their eligible transportation purposes. Next slide, please. And then we have the Federal Transit Assisted Formula Funds, also covered in Workshop 1, funding from FTA Section 5307, Urbanized Area Formula Program associated with Sacramento large urbanized area represents about 5.6% of our operating support. We also receive 5307 funding for the small urbanized areas. For Woodland, this supports about 13% of the operating budget, and for Davis, about 0.7%. In addition, we received 5311 rural area formula funding, which supports about 1% of the operating budget and is used for rural transit services within Yolo County. An important point to highlight is that Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento are the only jurisdictions where we receive a full mix of STA, LTF, and FTA formula funding tied to the urbanized areas. So the big takeaway from this is that the majority of YoloTD's formula funding is generated in the county's urbanized areas for Davis, Woodland, and West Sac, while services in other areas rely on other sources to support their transit needs. Next slide, please. Our operating budget structure. Next slide. So moving into the budget structure, starting with the services provided to each area. Most of you are already familiar with this, but it's just nice to see it in a nice table. So under the YoloTD operator, you'll see the administration listed across all jurisdictions because each jurisdiction pays a share of the administrative budget since those functions support the entire transit system. So we'll go into more detail about that a little later when we go over the administration budget and the funds that support it. So as shown in the table, we provide fixed route services to Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento. Paratransit services provided in all areas, while microtransit operates only in Woodland, Winters, and Knights Landing.
We have few questions.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the
Yeah,
information.
is it okay to ask a question?
We can go however you want. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, thank you so much. No, just a quick question on this slide, actually. Is the Route 215, which I think is the Cache Creek, casino route. So I don't see it listed, or unless I'm missing it somewhere. There's a lot of numbers, sorry. But also, and then it's basically, I don't know if we officially sort of would denote it as funded by the tribe or it's kind of funded by the county. So I
Yeah,
just
you
wanted,
know what? Thank you for pointing out. It should be it would be in the county
Okay.
line, so
got it.
sorry about that.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah,
You're
just curious
welcome.
about that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, did you have a question, Tina?
No, I'm just tracking.
Yeah, stop me anytime, guys. All right, so, next slide, please, Daisy. All right, so, continuing on the operating budget structure, these are the cost areas, as you know, and the major costs. So, today's purpose is not to do a budget audit or get into all the details. We're basically building the framework of, how it's structured, how we allocate in our processes. So in these, major, costs, I'm highlighting the three highest costs. So as you see, administration, mostly for number one is the personnel budget, which includes salary and benefits. Second is professional services, and third is utilities. Administration represents about 17% of our overall operating budget. And then there's fixed route, which represents 59% of our overall operating budget. And the three highest costs there are contracted transportation, insurance, and fuel. It's the same for microtransit and paratransit. And then multimodal I have down here, you see it without a percentage. And that's because most of our multimodal initiatives are funded by other funding sources. And we roll those projects up into the capital projects program within our budget. The mix here is that if we have any federal or state funds supporting those multimodal projects, there's a local match component that would roll up into the operating budget. So you don't see a percentage here because it's a bit of a mix between the two. Makes sense. Next slide, please. All right, so you guys will probably want to return to a few of these slides, so you might want to take note on the ones you want to come back to. So here we have the allocation of operating expenses by jurisdiction using the current fiscal year 25-26 as an example. The goal for this slide is to show how service costs are tied to the jurisdictions receiving the service while also recognizing outside funding sources that help offset those costs. It builds on the budget structure by showing how service costs are distributed across the jurisdictions. For example, in blue, fixed route local represents service operating primarily within each city, while Route 42AB are shared services connecting Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento. So those costs are distributed among those jurisdictions. One of the questions that may come to mind is how is Route 42 allocated? And looking back, I've done quite a bit of research in how we've done things before. And what I can tell, at least in the past 5 years, post-COVID, is that we had a number of one-time funding sources, mostly focused on COVID relief funds. So for the past several years, Route 42 allocations have been based on available funding sources after we apply the funds to the local routes. And then for anything after, going forward post-COVID funding relief, that obviously will make a difference, which we'll get into a little bit later. So what I can tell is that, when we have the influx of these one-time funding sources, we were applying the federal funds, the ST and LTF funds, and any of those other funds, before with the COVID funds. And so the COVID funds, we were prioritizing the use of those. We didn't have, a definite expiration on them or, when, any kind of time frame of when those funds would sunset. So we were really prioritizing those and then allocating those funds to any of the additional costs that weren't covered by your jurisdictional funding. So that's what I can tell for now. We are looking into it a little bit more. We have some new data that we're looking at about, how the miles and things are allocated across this route. So there's some work that we're doing internally to get a little more insight into allocating Route 42 and how to move forward with that, because obviously these relief funds are going away, and I wasn't able to determine at this point, how it was done pre-COVID.
Okay, I think we have a couple questions on that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We're going to start with Director Early.
I think
Yours is answered.
No.
Just
I just
questions
been
on
this
this.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah, go.
And it's just on this slide. I just wanted to make sure I understood like the breakout. So under administration, for Davis, Woodland, West Sac Winters, then totaling to 3.6 million. That is personnel costs, salaries and benefits for the organization. Is that for also the transit operator? I just want to make sure I'm.
No, not for the transit operator. It's for Yolo Transportation District.
Okay.
And it's not just personnel, salaries and benefits.
Oh,
It includes other
my bad.
administrators. I just highlighted the top three in the major cost slide, which
Got
are
it.
personnel, insurance, professional services, and
Okay. What falls under professional services?
that's actually in the next slide.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll wait.
Yeah.
Well, what falls under other? I see there's an
Yep,
asterisk
I was
question,
just
but-
getting to that.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So in the other column represents portions of the budget that are covered by funding sources rather than directly generated by not generated, but directly by the jurisdictions. So for administration, you see the 934,000. This includes other sources like interest earnings, fuel-related credits, outside fuel sales, cash creep mitigation funds, and advertising revenues. So in this column, you also see 1,000,029, which is about the amount of SB 125 Cycle 1 funds that actually cover in this year the portion of Route 42 service costs not covered by Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento, STA, LTF, and FTA formula funds. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. So just a quick question. So the numbers, the percentages on the bottom,
Yeah.
those aren't really gonna change, right? This is just an exercise in breaking down, because the numbers come from miles traveled within the jurisdiction.
The percentages?
So there's like down here, it says percent of budget, 18%, 31%. Those are gonna stay pretty static throughout, right? Because unless the routes change. Is that
Yeah.
Right, because these numbers are broken down by when 42A travels through a jurisdiction, you take how much of that jurisdiction it travels through. Unless those routes change, this is gonna stay static. It's not
Right,
a formula that would change over.
Assuming status quo, yeah.
Right, so if there's this isn't dollar distribution related on percentages.
and
This is just breaking down for us to see the vehicle miles traveled basically through jurisdictions.
Well, so we're not getting that deep into that detail in the slide. This is just, the percentages is just showing that Davis represents 18% of the total operating budget
But in
How do you get that
25,
number?
in
Right.
25,
And so how do you get that number?
I just take your total divided over the total operating budget. The 21,551,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 3.8 divided by 21.5,
Yes.
basically.
Okay.
I have another-
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify that, Chapman, I always, like your questions, because it helps me think a little bit deeper. So, on West Sacramento, I thought, but I could be wrong on this one, because we're looking at 25, 26.
Yeah.
But I thought there were some dollars that hadn't been spent, right, that we had found, right, that we were trying to like roll in. And so I'm asking because as Chapman noted, like, hey, these dollars aren't gonna change, but I was like, no, I actually don't think that's correct, because we're trying to spend back dollars. At least I know for West Sac, I won't, I actually think Woodland was one of those back dollars too.
Yeah, Woodland and a little bit of Davis.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's correct.
okay,
So the snapshot again is for 25, 26.
Yeah.
So this is how we applied the costs and the funding sources. So with the FTA funds, which I think you're referring to, we've talked a lot over the past 2.5 years that I've been here that we were doing a lot of work reconciling the federal 5307 funds that somehow kind of got left on the table while we had the COVID relief funds. So the process for that, we got into this a little bit in a few meetings ago, where there's a long process to put those awards, let's call them apportionments, into a grant. And so once we did our reconciliation and saw that we had a couple of years to spend in SAC USDA 5307 funding, at this point in time when this budget was developed, we were still programmed what years this money should go to. So for an allocation that wasn't programmed, let's say SAC USDA 23-24 money, let's say it was about 1.2 million. The work that we were doing at the time we developed this budget, we were trying to also balance, okay, we have this SB 125 money, we also have the COVID money that, what's left in that. So there's a prioritization in, what we wanted to use in this budget. And so that's going to dictate how we program that 23-24 $1.2 million, because when we submit an application to program it to FTA, we have to decide and request that the 1.2 million cover fiscal year 26, 25.
I'm good, yeah, no, I mean, I
So-
appreciate the very deep,
So-
so I guess my only question is it in here? No.
Some of it is in there.
Okay.
Yeah, what we knew at the time and what was programmed at the time, we could apply.
Okay,
And it's very relevant. I know I gave you a lot of words, but it's very relevant because it speaks to a lot of the ways that we have prioritized funding, because if that those funds weren't in spendable form at the time, and we had to go through the process. It technically wasn't available for us to budget that. So, but yeah, so in these later years, now that we're caught up and we have programs, most of the older, years, we have a better, we had to say which years they were going to apply to. So that's what you'll probably see more of in this week's budget. But yeah, you do have a couple of years of set that will show up in the next few budgets.
So I think just to end at least this one, and then my colleague had some questions on this. I think what I'm understanding is to Chapman's question where you asked, hey, the numbers are gonna kind of stay the same. The answer is actually no, they're not, because part of what you just said was, hey, we're gonna be programming back dollars, right, that weren't available to us or weren't ready to be spent or lots of different reasons in future years. I will be curious, at least I will speak for Westac here. We'll be interested to know how much of the back dollars were already programmed, right? Because we can't, right, diagnose it, and you don't have to answer that here. But I'm just saying, like, that would be one of our follow-up questions.
Yeah, sure. That's easy to.
Yeah,
It wasn't last year, but today.
Yes, I know you've been working hard on it.
So just a reminder, this isn't addressing funding. So you don't have the detail of the funding. This is expenses. The only reason why I dove into the other column is to show that,
Oh, that's a good, thank you. That's a good call out.
Yeah, so, okay. We're good on this slide?
We have another.
Another very
Okay,
good question.
sure.
Just what is, so on that slide, in the middle of the slide or the middle of the left cost area, so fixed route, intercity, CC in parentheses, what is that?
That's causal connection.
Cost connection, okay.
I had to put it in there to balance the budget to tie it to the 25-26.
Okay, okay, so, and then, so roughly $600,000 goes in the other category and, not allocated to one specific, okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't fall in your columns.
Is the Route 215 included in this chart?
It is, yeah, the budget for it is included in here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right, next slide, please. So that was the budget structure. Now we're getting into the budget development process. And so we'll first cover the administration budget. So in the previous slides, I mentioned that the biggest cost in administration is salaries and benefits. So I kind of want to take you a little through the timeline. Personnel budget, we can start a little bit earlier in the budget development process. So what you're looking at here is sort of our timeline and then our steps as well. So we currently have 15 full-time employees and up to 6 part-time employees who are generally interns. In February, we project step increases based on upcoming performance reviews, prorating them for the fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year. So employees already at the top of their step salary scale of the classification would not have a step increase budgeted. Then in February to March, we review benefit costs, including health and dental insurance, along with required employer contributions for pension and OPEB based on the most recent actuarial valuation reports. Around March, we began monitoring CPI trends to estimate a potential cost of living adjustment along with related increases in employer payroll taxes. In April, the CPI index is finalized. So under the YoloTD personnel policy and subject to board approval, employees may receive a COLA, cost of living adjustment, between 2% and 4%. So using the CPI to adjust the salary scale and associated employer costs, this allows us to finalize the personnel budget for each employee based on the current step and projected step for the upcoming fiscal year. And then the personnel budget is proposed in May and brought to the board for final approval with the rest of the budget in June. Questions there?
Yeah. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So here is where we have the other administration major costs. So professional services, that's where you are seeing we have legal, audit and actuarial services, those are all normal. human resources support, IT support, facilities maintenance, marketing and communications, pest control, and janitorial. So professional services include HR consulting support because we don't have a dedicated HR department, as well as legal counsel because we don't have an in-house legal staff either. These services also include our marketing and communications needs. And in the recent years, you guys know we had some vacancies. So this was a big thing for us. We needed that additional support while we were working on filling some of our vacancies, mainly with marketing and communications. We had a board clerk that was out, so we used professional services to have a consultant board clerk for a little while, if you guys remember that. And then we also had our IT position that was vacant for 2 years now and finally filled. And so these professional services usually roll up into the administration budget. And then utilities, our normal stuff, landline, cell phones, electricity, gas, garbage, security, internet, water, sewer, those things. Any questions there?
Pretty straightforward.
Next slide, please. Okay, so transit service cost development process. So now that we've covered the major costs for administration, we'll go over how we go about developing the budget for transit costs. So first is establishing services, which includes the decisions to, we've had a lot going on in the past couple of years. Are we restoring? Are we expanding? When do we want to do it during the fiscal year? And since COVID, we discontinued service, we partially restored, we fully restored, and we expanded some services. The budget development begins with the services that we decide beforehand. So for fixed route, restoring or expanding services could include longer days of service, additional trips, or an entirely new route. For microtransit, it could also mean longer days of service, an additional vehicle, and additional days like a Sunday. And then paratransit mirrors fixed route. So typically, if fixed route services increase, we can expect to see an increase in paratransit. And then service cost units. Once the service levels are established for the fiscal year, miles and hours and number of trips are calculated. For fixed route, we're billed by the hour, mile, and we budget for maintenance based on the number of vehicles needed and the condition of those vehicles to operate the service. So for microtransit, we also bill for hours, but no mileage, and there's no annual fee, but I'll get to that in a little bit. And paratransit follows the same. We're billed hourly per vehicle in service during the hours that we provide. And then service costs. Our current contract applies an hourly rate per mile, and an annual fixed fee. So those are the three main components of the transit service costs. The service costs include fuel, insurance, and maintenance costs. Microtransit was an added optional service and does not have a fixed fee component in this current contract. Any questions? So this is an example that I wanted to provide to show how we go about calculating the transit service. And this one is specifically for fixed route and for the Woodland to 11 route. Now, we know that Woodland is in service Monday through Sunday, but for this purpose of the slide and just showing how the calculation is done, I only zone in on just the weekdays. So starting from the left, you would have a start and end time. And the start and end time would include revenue hours and what they call deadhead time. And so that's typically the time at the start and the end of the route when they're not carrying passengers. And so for this day, one day would be about 15.9 hours per day. And the hourly rate in our current contract is $0.64 an hour, giving us $773 per day. And then you hop over to the miles from stop to stop, including revenue miles and deadhead hours. There's 13.0 miles and 15 trips. And then you take that per day is 196.35, and then the rate for the miles is 99 cents. So you're looking at $194 per day for the miles, Monday through Friday for Woodland Transit route 211. And then for the days, this is weekdays only, you have 5 days of that week. There's 50.2 weeks. In this fiscal year, there are 251 days of Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So you take the combined cost of the 773 plus the 194 times 251 days for the fiscal year, arriving to 242,717 per year in costs for just the hours and miles for Route 211 weekdays only. And then the annual fixed fee. The annual fixed fee for fixed route is $2,877,533 per year. And how we allocate that is we take the number of hours for Route 211 for the weekdays, or just for total, but in this example, it's for the weekdays, and over the total hours for fixed route. And then that comes out about 2.7% of the total fixed route hours. And then the annual fee for this route is $77,693 per year, for a total of $319,657 for this route weekdays.
And just to,
Go ahead.
okay, just to be clear, is a 2.7% of total, I'm just making sure I'm tracking, or even the 77,693 per year, that really comes out of the fixed fee of I'm gonna round up to 9 million,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so you're saying Route 211 represents, I think, is it 2.7% of the 2.9 million?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Is there a corresponding slide or data table that shows how many riders this serves, or the cost per rider?
No, I don't have ridership information in today's workshop. That's something that we're still working on internally. No. But we can at a future. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
If I may, we do report ridership, including cost per ride for our system overall, to the National Transit Database. And so we certainly could do that on a per route basis, but I don't believe that we report that in that format. I don't think that's what is required from me, right? Daisy's corroborating that. So it's certainly information that we can provide. We can take these costs and then say how many people are riding it. It's totally doable with the data that we have. We just don't have that for today.
I would say my team, at least my city transportation folks, I think they do want that. Yes, I think it's something that they have wanted. I think to your point, I think it's something that YTD has been working on. But if you all have that, I think they would very much appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe you all can share that if you have the information, or at least what is reported, share it with is it the tech? Is that what the tech? Yeah, that's, so will you have staff from all jurisdictions there?
Yeah, I would say if that's something you can share with myself and at least I'll just speak for Westack, City of Westack staff. Even if you just shared it with me and Ariana and Autumn, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, so all of that data that we report is available online. We're happy to share that. And Brian has just reminded me on Teams that the SRTP also has all that information as well. The Short Range Transit Plan Existing Conditions Report, which we presented.
I just want to be
last year.
super specific. What we just said, we would want, because I think, I like to say to my team, clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
Is that we would want the rider by cost per route.
Per route.
I do not think that currently exists. Is that at least available that I've seen? Is that a thing and we've just missed it?
I haven't looked at the existing conditions report in the SRTP in a while, but I'll go back and look and see if it.
Okay, I think you might
I
have
don't want to
separate,
speak.
right, but I don't think per cost,
Okay.
is what I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's even, we had in our last meeting 6 scenarios to help close our gap. And one of those was decreasing service, right? So if we're looking at these routes and trying to figure out what's the most, what's gonna have the most impact on riders, it would be important to have that information presented in this budgetary spot as well. Yes.
Okay. Any more questions on this calculation?
Great information.
Okay, so, that was the purchase transportation, contracted transportation cost and how we develop, and calculate that. So the other costs are here in this slide. I'm doing the same thing for micro and paratransit in the later slides. So again, listing our main costs, rolled up into other transit costs for fixed route. Obviously, again, insurance, you'll see there. Fuel and charging. So with fixed route, we do operate electric buses. So there's an electric charging cost component coupled with fuel. And then on the right side, you're seeing cost drivers like fleet and facilities maintenance increasing as our infrastructure ages and services and parts have increased over the past few years. Technology costs include communications, hardware, onboard systems, and software licenses. And as you know, the most recent update to our technology was the installation of automatic passenger counters to the fixed route buses. And then again, services, this can range depending on the service type, from advertising to transit planning, like the short range transportation plan. This is typically where you might see the local match operating component show up. And then we also include a contingency amount that in case of an emergency or something unexpected, like a major breakdown or anything that could disrupt service. Questions there?
Yeah, can I ask a quick one?
Yeah.
Is this, forgive me for not knowing this, are we part of YC Parmia? Who's our insurance carrier?
Like Caltech?
CalTIP. And has CalTIP, we seen any, one of our biggest increases, at least in the city, gave us in other jurisdictions, has been in the increased cost in insurance and then severe increased costs in PJB, right? Ours was over $1 million in 1 year. And our insurance has gone through the roof as being part of YC Premier. Are we seeing that with CalTIP at all?
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
is that 10% reflective of what?
Yeah,
that
this already,
increases?
it already reflects the increases that we experienced, at least up until this point when we, put this budget together. So everything in these slides is based on the current budget. So, but yeah, Autumn mentioned that earlier about, insurance. We're seeing a lot of spikes there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're feeling it.
All right, thank you.
All right, next slide, moving on to microtransit. So contracted services calculation, the example we're using here is Winters. And we are using the Monday through Thursday service. Winters does also operate on the weekends, but for simplicity, we're using Monday through Thursday to show the calculation. This one, like fixed route, has kind of the same components, only microtransit is billable by the hour, and the total hours per day are multiplied by the number of days that were in service. So you're not seeing mileage here in the cost calculation. And so in this example for Winters, Monday through Sunday, we have about our services from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so that's 12 hours per day at 58.35 per hour, taking us to $700 per day.
Great. You
But we
did just say Monday through
Yes.
Thursday. You said Monday through Sunday.
But we don't have service.
There's no.
We don't have Sunday service.
The weekend,
We have Saturday only.
Monday, this is Monday through Thursday. And then I think they said that Winters has service on the weekend, but you said you only have it on Saturday. Well, for the calculation, it's just for Monday and Thursday.
Got it. Yeah, but just a quick clarification
Yeah.
question, like, why have Monday through Thursday? Why would we not just like, I mean, we operate 5 days a week, or in some cases 7 days a week, why would we, why would we not just use our calculations based on the days of the week we operate?
We do. We include all the hours of operation in the budget, but this slide only includes Monday through Thursday, just to show how the calculation is done.
Okay,
It's not the full detail of how the budget, was calculated. It's
Got
just illustrative.
okay, it's illustrative of, I get it's an example, and illustrative, but I mean, showing 5 days a week, or in this case, 6 days a week it's not like, it's not an exponentially larger number, for example, right? I mean, why couldn't we just show the whole number? Right, so 200, we're showing Monday through Thursday, but it operates Monday through Saturday. I mean, earlier in the presentation, you do have the total cost, I presume,
Yeah.
which is $462,000 per year for microtransit and Winters. And so this just shows the $281,000 is the Monday through Thursday cost. So presumably the rest of the year's Fridays and Saturdays equal up to $462,000.
I'm following the microtransit schedule for winter, so I just picked out just that frame, Monday through Thursday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., just for the example. So there's no real reason behind not including the calculation. It just would have been a crowded slide.
Got it.
Because it would need its own hours column just for that Saturday,
Okay.
and showing the time frame just for that Saturday, and then the number of hours just for that Saturday. So it would have been 2 columns to show somewhat the same.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, because the hours on Friday and Saturday are different than Monday through Thursday. Okay.
Okay, where were we? Number of vehicles. There's 2 vehicles that serve Winters, and so you times that annual amount by 2 vehicles, and you're at $281,200 per year. So as I mentioned earlier, microtransit in the current contract does not apply an annual fixed fee.
But you're imagining in the upcoming contract it will?
I
Okay, that's okay. Didn't ask it. Okay.
Yeah, I think short range, I think there's reasons why. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I can say that we structured the pricing in the next transit operations contract the same as it is currently.
Oh, okay, that's helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just to keep it apples to apples.
Thank you. Is there a way to raise the AC?
Yeah, I think it's a somewhere too.
Or lower it, whatever.
It's hot heat.
Make it
Up in
cooler.
here, the conversations are heating up in here. It's-
Sorry, guys.
You're all wrong.
we good on this one?
Go ahead.
All right. So like fixed route, there are other transit costs. These are very similar to the fixed route costs as far as the categories and what the demands are. It was bus drivers. The main difference here is that microtransit doesn't have electric vehicles, so you're not seeing the fuel and electric charges coupled there. We have 8 vehicles that were purchased in 2023, and then 1 purchased in 2020. So relatively newer fleet compared to most of our fixed route buses. Paratransit. Another illustrative calculation of how we develop the paratransit contracted transportation budget. So here is a little bit of a mix, and it did take me a little while to figure out how it has been done over the years. I adopted the practice in the past 2 years, but preparing for this budget workshop, of course, you want it to be as informed as possible and be able to really understand how we've done it. So what I could discern from how the calculation has been done is we have this data that we can pull that has all the trips, the time of when it starts and when it ends, and the location. And so we take those, and there's it has the cities included in that data. And so what has been done is that data for trips is reviewed. And then it gets calculated with how many trips were for Davis, how many trips were for, Woodland. And then that kind of gets put on the side. Then the hours are reviewed. So similar data, reviewing the hours, how many hours, it took for all the trips. And we're usually using data from March, from the previous year through April during the time we're developing the budget. So we're reviewing the hours, and looking at that, we're getting a sense of what is the average amount of time for trips, comparing the two side by side. And so what it looks like is that each trip averages about 1 hour. And so what you see here is the review of the number of trips, which in the prior year, we have about 454 average monthly trips, totaling 5,444 per year. And then, like I said, we kind of put that on the side and then review the hours. So reviewing the prior year and current year hours, averaging it to about 1 hour a trip, equals 5,444 hours per year. Given that, we then apply the hourly rate for paratransit service, arriving to 47,474 per year. You with me so far?
Yep.
Okay. And then there's the annual fixed fee. Paratransit does have the annual fixed fee, which is $358,344 in the current contract for paratransit. We take, similar to our allocation of the fixed annual rate, the proportionate share of the Davis in this example, paratransit hours, 5,444 over the total paratransit hours budgeted for this current fiscal year, 24,699, arriving to 22% of the annual fee, which means 78,984 in annual fixed fee for paratransit. Questions?
Yes, yeah, but not, because this is illustrative. Right, it's not the actual amount, right? This is just the illustrative.
This is the actual budget.
So, well, I'm looking at page 9, which shows the dollar amount for Davis, paratransit, 666,000, and this is 526,000.
Well, this doesn't include insurance and vehicle maintenance and fuel.
Okay, so this is just
This is
purely the
Contracted
Okay.
transportation.
Okay, perfect, thank you, appreciate that clarification.
Yes. Okay, we good here, guys? Yeah. Okay, next one. All right. Much transit, other costs. So, nothing real new here. It follows the same, main costs: insurance, fuel, fleet and facilities maintenance, technology, services, including transit planning, and contingency as well. Any questions? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so on to use and allocation of funding sources. All right. Starting off light, we have a high level overview. Let me get to that. Of YoloTD's funding sources and how they fall into two categories: restricted, which are funds used for a specific purpose, and unrestricted, which are more flexible funds, which can be used towards operating, capital, planning, and to help build reserves. About 82% of our operating budget, or roughly 17.7 million, comes from restricted sources. These funds must be used for specific purposes and typically come with eligibility requirements or program rules. Examples earlier were federal transit formula funds and STA and LTL funds. There are additional restrictions on the local carbon transit operations program, LCTOP, SGR, the state of good repair, and SB 125 as defined by the approved projects. And then on the other hand, about 18% of our operating budget, approximately 3.9 million, is considered more flexible funding. These sources can generally be applied where they are most needed to support transit operations, and they include passenger fares, outside fuel sales, investment earnings, and environmental fuel credits. Those are the RIN and LCFS credits. So this is just a kind of high level. These are all of our funding sources. And the key takeaway is that, there is 82% of it that is restricted for a specific purpose. And then a relatively small portion of our funding, which is flexible, and limits how much discretion we have in addressing operating needs and budget pressures. Questions in? Next slide, please. All right. So eligible uses and order of funding. So this was a fun one for me to put together because I was trying to accomplish a lot of things in one slide and make it understandable. So it took a while, and I hope you get a lot from it. So here, this slide builds on the previous ones, showing how each funding source can be used and the order in which we typically apply those funds. It also shows the average amount we've received from the sources over the past 3 years to give a sense of what we might expect going forward. And at the top, you see again the FTA formula funds, 5307 UZA and 5311 rule. Now remember, these funds support operations and capital. And then next, skipping over the CARES ones, next is the state and local funds, STA and LTF under TDA. These are core funding sources that support the majority of our operating annual costs. And then you see the partner funds such as SAC-RT and UC Davis contributions for Causeway Connection, as well as Cache Creek mitigation funds, which support transit services tied to the mitigation agreement. And then toward the bottom are the system-wide revenues. So if you remember that other column in the previous slides where we're using funds that are not directly coming from jurisdictions, that is the system-wide revenues. I kind of lumped all the rest of them in number 11. So that's the fares, the interest, the credits, and advertising. So when we total the 3-year average across all sources, it comes to about 22.4 million. However, again, it's important to note that in this includes the one-time COVID-related funds such as the CARES and CRISA, and then also SB 125 allocations. The last of the COVID funds will be spent down this year. There's very, very little left. I want to say about maybe 140,000 left. So those dollars we can expect to not be available and listed in here in future budgets. So for context, looking at that 3-year average total at 22.4 million, our current operating budget is 21.5 million. So even when looking at this 3-year average, which includes the one-time COVID relief funds, the available funding barely keeps pace with current operating levels. So the key takeaway here is that most funds are directed toward maintaining operations, and it leaves a very limited funding capacity for capital and planning needs, such as vehicle replacement and infrastructure improvements. So this is the funding application order that we develop the budget on, and then also when we prepare our claims for federal dollars and state and local dollars. So this also is a calculation that our auditors do during the audit, where they will calculate and bring together all of our operating expenses, They'll take a look at the revenues that we claim, including federal money, and TDA money, and, apply them in that order. So, there could be, situations that you know, and that we've mentioned in the past where, if the funding is out of order, they're looking at local matches, if the local matches were met, if we utilize or program too much of the federal funds, or if we utilize or claim too much of the TDA funds. So the order is really important. And that's how we go about developing the budget. So when you have your overall cost, we go and apply the funding sources that are available, and then go in this kind of stacking order.
Yes.
Just a quick item, and it has nothing to do with, I think it's probably just historically how we've maybe referred to it. I think we should, if it is officially called Cache Creek mitigation, I think we need to change that terminology. Just like we attempt to move away from less special. I mean, we have a government to government relationship with YoloTD, and so as a county anyway, and so and the other cities in the region do too. I mean, I think, and this agency has long had a relationship as well. So it's, I think there's probably better terminology than mitigation for what? I'm not actually asking for an answer. I mean, right? No, exactly. Yeah, but right. So, it's, So I just think that's something we should think about. So.
Thank you. Any other questions on this slide?
I mean, I get it, mitigation for impacts for traffic or whatever, but I think there's got to be a different, way to sort of frame that, I would say.
I just want to make, you good? Okay. So in this case, last 3-year average, and then what we are about to look at, I think, on the next page is 25, 26, that 21.5 million. Okay, just want to make sure I'm keeping up.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you were saying as well, which is take a look at the difference between operating and our last year, our last 3-year average.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that's correct.
Because the 2 million was just one time, so if you take that 2 million off, technically we're not in a great place. Okay.
I know. The 3-year average, I just chose the 3 years just to get a good amount to show the regular funding sources, and then I had to include the COVID. So,
okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this? Next slide, please. So here we go into a little more detail that might look better and more transparent as far as how the funds are utilized and applied per jurisdiction. So this is kind of that double clicking on the slides that we saw earlier where we had them captured with the fixed route and the numbers in that one. So these are applying the actual funding sources and bringing together the concepts that we discussed earlier. So across the top, you see the total operating expenses by jurisdiction, which include all transit and administrative services that we discussed in the budget structure slides. Down the left, I kept the same order as the previous slides. You see how the order is important. First, applying the funding that is specifically available for transit operations. And then the formula funds, federal formula funds, STA and LTF. And so these are the primary funding sources, again, tied to the jurisdictions. So after those funds are applied, there are still costs that need to be covered. And that, at that point, we rely on other funding sources, which are shown in the other column. These include system-wide revenues, such as fares, environmental credit revenues, advertising, interest revenues, that support the transit system as a whole rather than a single jurisdiction like we talked about earlier. So in this other column, we kind of double clicked on it a little bit earlier, but now you're seeing where it's kind of showing up in the jurisdiction a little more detail. So the 595,633, we know that's for the causeway connection, Cache Creek mitigation. This is, the Cache Creek, we'll keep calling it for today. Cache Creek mitigation funds, 1.2 support the services provided in Yolo County, and then 436,475 support the administration budget. I have a slide later for you that shows all the funding sources that were applied to the administration budget. So the other column also represents $249,000 in fares, and lost my place.
I don't quite understand that one. So under others, the fares, I would have thought were fares coming related to trips or something taken within that category, so within the county, within Winters.
Yeah.
So is it just remaining fare revenue
Yeah.
then gets put in this category?
So here's the thing. So with the other column, there's kind of a multi-purpose that I have going on here. So if you remember in the slide earlier, I had the amount for SB 125 that covered the remaining cost of Route 42. So to do that, there is the fares component that kind of goes along with that. So because I'm showing that these fares, kind of represent the portion of Route 42 if it came from a little from Davis, a little from Sac, a little from Woodland. So that's the proportionate share that was applied just for that. It's just that other column, which for this year represents Route 42. Yeah. Okay, and then the 800. Remaining 854,474 is the admin after STA and LTF funds are applied.
We have another question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, the SB 125, how were those determined to be allocated across the jurisdictions?
So kind of going back to the implementation of the funding that we had available. So going in that same order, once we've applied those and there's still remaining costs to allocate, that's how we went about allocating where we needed to close those gaps.
Okay, so just to be clear, so you go through each jurisdiction, you see what funding streams are available as you're going through your order, and then you get to the end and it's like, okay, what gap is there to fill?
Right.
And then because the statewide revenues were basically kind of unrestricted for all intents and purposes, the gap was filled by SB 125.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Other question? Good. Okay. All right. Next slide, Amy. Oh, did it? Okay. Okay, so this might feel a little bit out of order, but I thought it was important to just kind of seal the deal on how the STA and LTF funds are allocated when you're looking at that administration budget. There's a table in the budget that you guys usually, where you'll see the STA and LTF allocations by jurisdiction. There you guys have your own box, and then it shows a component of the admin fee, and then transit services, fixed route, paratransit, and microtransit. And then, so there were questions around that during the budget process and then leading up to us having discussions about doing the budget workshop. So in this illustration or these tables, when we're first working on the administration budget, as I mentioned earlier, we go through and we apply all the other funding sources. So in this case, we have to apply the funds that are available to us, and those are mostly the unrestricted funds. So LCF credits, interest, some of Cache Creek. Then we apply the STA and LTF funds. So what you're seeing here, if you start on the bigger funds on the right, and you saw this number earlier, the administration budget is $3.6 million. So we go through the process of applying what we estimate we'll receive in that fiscal year for these other system-wide revenue sources. Once we've done that, it leaves that gap. And so that's when we go in and we apply the STA funds that are allocated to the jurisdictions. In the past years, before this 25-26 budget, in the past years, STA funds allocated to the jurisdictions was enough to close that gap after we've applied the other system-wide revenue sources. But this year, we actually had to use some of the LTF funds to close the gap as well. So those are the two tables that you're seeing there. The top one is the STA allocation per jurisdiction. So if you were to look at our budget book and look at your STA allocation for this year, those will be the amounts. And so you see, we apply the full 2.253 to the administration budget, leaving still a balance of 439,035. So that's where we used some of your LTF funds to close the administration gap. And then the rest of the LTF funds are applied to transit services, fixed route, micro.
That's Yolo. Sarah, I just have to say, I don't see it over here.
It is up, go ahead.
Okay, just two quick questions, to make sure I am following.
Yes.
So historically, STA dollars have been enough, just to make sure I'm keeping track. After you also factor in some of the, other kinds of revenue, this year, I appreciate you breaking out the STA, because I think what's happening is you're saying, hey, this is the amount of your STA dollars that are paying for administration, right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. I think it would be helpful, and after this, I would ask, I'd be curious for that same breakout on the LTF,
Sure.
because I think most of our LTF is going towards, I would assume, our routes and ridership and whatnot, right?
Yes, yes.
I just want to make sure, because right now it's like total 7.4, but I don't think that's actually what is being, obviously, right, the 439,000.
Is going towards administration, and then the rest is going towards transit services.
Right, and I'm just saying, in the same way you broke out the STA dollars, could you break out what's going towards administration? Because I think that's what you're indicating, right? It's like, hey, you got 439,000 from
Left cover.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that I want to say, if you don't mind, let me look really quick. I thought I had a slide that broke out the LTF amount.
And that's fine. It's great presentation. There's a lot to cover, right? So just follow-up conversation.
Yeah, no worries. That's easy enough. Okay. Any other questions left on that one?
If I may, I think that, is that number not what's there in the bottom left?
I think, oh, we're gonna say something.
That's the LTF, but.
So good. So maybe it might be a misunderstanding for me, which is actually really helpful for this workshop. So LTF dollars broken out there, the 439,000, is there an allocation of that 439,000 across the LTF, or you're like, no, that's not how it works? That's what I'm wondering. Because I think that's what you're saying. It's just, I think, right? So in the same way you have STA broken out here, I'm saying of this 439,000, is there a same breakout here, or no, that doesn't exist?
It does exist, but not in here.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I wasn't misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we were on the same page. Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I've done it. We're good.
Okay, all right, where are we? All right, next section, status of unrestricted funds and capital reserves.
Setting those to the side.
All right, yeah, I've actually never put a table together on this, so this was a little fun, but a little doom and gloom. So
We did some plan. This is not doom and gloom. We are being strategic here.
Yeah, so, okay, so, here's our, reserves. And, we show them separately by restricted for capital reserves and then unrestricted funds. So looking at the general reserves on the right side of the table, you can see that between 2019 and 2024, the balance fluctuated, but generally remained back at 6 million. The higher balances are attributed to when we receive larger claims, which are deposited directly into these accounts before we transfer them to our general operating account and use for operations. So it's like sleeping overnight, basically. And so these reserves serve as the agency's primary financial cushion for unexpected costs and economic fluctuations. During 24-25, in the middle STA all column, we utilized all of the STA capital reserves to support fleet and facility repair needs. And so all of that was drawn down in this past year. And then our general reserves policy requires maintaining reserves equal to 25% of our operating budget. So for 25-26, that requirement is $5,387,000. And based on the current balance, we technically meet that policy. However, while the policy is met, the overall reserve balance does not provide significant capacity to address major operating pressures or larger capital needs, particularly given in the scale of our fleet replacement and infrastructure needs. So here the big takeaway is that we meet our reserves requirement, but they remain relatively limited and they don't provide a lot of flexibility for us to absorb anything major with operating increases or capital investment. Questions on that? Hi, Daisy.
For that 25%, is that pretty standard across transit agencies, or is that something we talked to specifically here?
I'm not sure what other transit agencies use. I'm from cities, so we're usually about 6 months reserve, so 50%. But yeah, I'm not sure. This was established actually maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah, this was, we did not have a reserve policy, so this was the first time we created it. I want to say it was 2022, 2023.
So is it a 3-month reserve?
It's a 4.
4 months.
Yeah.
25%.
Yeah. 3. Yeah.
I will say, if I may jump in on that, just to underscore that point. Many of the funds that we receive, it's reimbursement only. And so what that means is when we don't have sufficient funding to, this actually came up recently with some of the purchases of vehicles that we've done. If we don't have money in the bank to purchase them upfront and then get reimbursed, we have to wait until money comes in until we can purchase those vehicles. And that's something that is a challenge with, I think, that I've really seen with our reserves being as low as they are, is that we don't have the flexibility to front those large costs when they do come up.
Any questions on that? Okay, post-COVID historical financial data. I thought this was important to share to give just a better picture of. I've had a lot of changes in the past couple of years for a number of reasons, coupled with service changes and things like that. So I went all the way back to pre-COVID to provide some information on what we were looking like before. And of course, today's prices for everything, comparing these budgets aren't really apples to apples, but just for reference, we're seeing, where we were in revenues back in 2018-19 to 23-24, and then some of the fluctuations there, as well as in the expense category and their fluctuations. I also provide a total capital contribution. You see some big spikes there, and I have reasons for those changes summarized at the bottom. So I won't read through all of them, but we can talk about whichever one you want to call out. So in the blue are the revenues and those changes. I'll speak to the bigger ones. Let's go to the revenues in 21-22. So you see this drop in revenue from the 14.35 to 12.9. So again, this is due to the timing of our claims and when those, remember when I said it's really important to know about programming the federal funds and which operating years they cover, because if you technically don't have a grant for it, you can't use it, right? or you can't budget for it because you technically don't have it. So the period of performance is what FTA calls it, right? The period of performance in which these funds will be applied to and what type of services they'll be applied to. So in between these years when we were spending down a lot of those COVID relief funds, there was a lot of this timing issue with submitting the claims. I wasn't here during that time, but when the grant or the period of performance does not align with that fiscal year's expense, or it's, let's say it expired and you have to amend it to extend it. What will happen during an audit, and I don't want to go too much into details, but I do want to share this, is that if the grant was not technically in place at that June 30th, 2022, they will remove the revenue from that fiscal year. And then when everything is sorted out with the grant, we've done our amendment or we programmed it or whatever the need is, that revenue will report in the next year. So you see a little bit of a timing. So it's not like we had a lower year in revenue. It's just we had to report some of those revenues in the following year aligned with when the grant, and then when we were eligible to claim those expenses. So that's what you're seeing there with the timing. And then same thing for 22, 23. These are the years 22, 23, 23, 24. I came at the beginning of 2020, 23, 24. So this was the time when we're looking at all the available funding sources we had and some of those federal apportionments that we weren't programming. So it makes that difficult to claim the funds when you don't have a good inventory of them. And so that's where you're seeing the revenue fluctuation. And then on the expense side, for contributions to capital, you see a big spike, that 9.9, that's when we bought 8 CNG buses right before COVID hit. So that's where you're seeing that spike. And then, you know, obviously the dips are where we decrease transit service, decrease in depreciation, vehicles are being used, and then relative increases to the purchase transportation costs. Okay.
This is the plan. Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
We get the
definitely.
future, like, yeah.
Last slide.
Yep, we're on the last one. It's almost to you, man. Let's do this.
We see you.
All right, and then our future impacts on operating budget. You guys have heard us talk about, you know, most of these in a number of different meetings. So revenues, we're seeing some potential impacts in decline due to expiration of relief funds, some volatility in STA and LTF funds, FTA funding tied to service levels, uncertainty in state funding programs, expiration of temporary relief funds like the SB 125, and then limited capital funding opportunities, as well as slow ridership recovery. On the plus side, we continue to pursue capital grants, and then in the somewhat near future, the VMT mitigation and future toll revenues or the revenue impacts. And then expense side, we're seeing anticipating a change in the new transit contract expected this August. And then electrification and zero emission fleet conversion, insurance increases, bill and energy spikes we're anticipating. And then the need for, if we are awarded more federal grants or state grants, usually there's the matching component for that. So that would impact our operating budget for meeting the local match on those grants. And then aging fleet, of course, leading to higher maintenance costs, and then just in general, costs outpacing our revenue growth.
And the fuel and energy spikes includes politics.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to be clear, right, because what we're hearing coming out with the war, right, and everything is that there are going to be even more spikes. So is that something that we are already accounting for?
Well, we're anticipating it, I mean, in the next budget, yeah, in the next budget, yeah, I mean, we.
I just have a general question on it. I don't know how that affects CNG compared to gas or diesel. I don't know that, but I would like to know that at a future time.
Yeah. And that's it.
What? Do the directors have any questions before we go to the public comment or any clarified statement? Seeing none, would be a great time to take public comment on this item. Mr. Alan Hirsch, would you like to come up?
Thank you very much. This was an amazing presentation. And not only was it easy to understand, it's very pretty. It's easy, I mean, so dense, but the words and the presentation is very clear. You clearly spent a lot of time on the presentation just to the numbers, and you're more than an accountant, you're a management accountant.
Wow, thank you.
So, yeah, I just want to know that. Of course, I want to expand on a comment that Mara and Dante talked about in terms of cost per passenger. That's really important, because otherwise we're just doing retroactive, kind of throwing money at the problem. We want to know what results we get out of it. So cost per passenger is really, really important by route and by time of day and things like that. So anything we can do that. We have the new meters in the buses now. So now we've got some good numbers on that. And also cost per passenger mile. Because one of the services we're trying to provide is how long the VMT mitigation and travel time and things like that. So that's really important. So I hope that'll help you in terms of all your presentations and your reports too. By also by city, not just by routes. I think that's important. We need to do that so the city can see where they're getting the thing. And I'm very particularly interested in the cost per rider and cost per mile. On the micro transit versus a fixed route, what area that is and how the shift is. And I do want to note that there's a 20%, I don't understand, you need to explain it to me, there's a 20% cost difference. Microtransit costs 20% more per hour to operate than the fixed route. I don't understand that. I'm sure you'll explain that somewhere along the line. That seems to be an indication here. And also, the fares are different. You have two different fare numbers on page 22 and 23. And maybe that's page 22, 2023. There's the fare revenue of 1.3 million, and page 22 is 1.2 million. I'm sure there's an explanation for that. And my final thought is the last page, future impacts and budgeting thing. This is probably the most important thing about it, because this is managing for expectations, and you need to put an order of magnitude. Like as a 10% difference on gasoline, what's that impact on the entire thing versus 10% change in the cost of pest control? I mean, that's pretty trivial. So you need to put a number on this thing and qualify it. And also banks are required to do something called stress testing.
Yep.
And, and sensitivity analysis is another word for it. So what happens if one of these things go really weird? How does that ripple through the entire budget? I'm sure that's a management thing. And another comment is there's management account there in business school. We talk about 3 times. You did triple entry bookkeeping. You did accounting for the tax man. You did a set of books for financial reporting, and you did this 3rd set of books for the management. And the management was the best part of what was really happening. So I know the timing on grants, for example, there's an artifact of that, but you could restate that for the team in terms of as a management report, or at least actually put that in a footnote. It's really important. So you think to the manager, so that's management reporting, and the management reporting is the cost per fare and cost per passenger, things like that. So just some thoughts. Wonderful report, really impressive.
Thank you.
And thank you all for digging in so deep. It's a special agency and a special board that wants to go this deep and really wants to understand this thing. So thank you all for doing that.
Thank you. Come on up.
Yes.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you for having me and the thoughts of Sacramento on this to participate in this presentation. First of all, I want to echo the comments from the last speaker and say big stingers up. Very, very well done. Thank you for that. Very easy to understand. But I want to talk about perhaps looking at this and what's been done in past budgets, but kind of look ahead in the future to some funding source potentials that were not really mentioned until the very last slide as the presentation ended. I want to look at the Yolo 80 managed lanes, potential revenue sources from that. Potential revenue sources through CARTA. Potential revenue sources through the potential of forming the California Public Bank, if that does come to happen. And cost sharing agreements. Cost sharing agreements is something fairly new in the Sacramento region. One example I can give you, and there's one potential in the future. Route 137, which operates from Elk Grove to UC Davis Medical Center, is 100% paid for by UC Davis Health. The transit operator operating that service does not pay for the operating cost of that route at all. The Gold Runner and Ace want to expand up into Rio Linda along Sorrento and Elkhorn Boulevard and have a passenger rail station. But they also want to shuttle to SMF in that area, and there's no service provider. They're willing to pay in a cost-sharing agreement for the operators, the maintenance of the buses, the operation of the service, and the agreement with the transit provider to have that service at their expense. And the transit operator agreed not to have anything at their expense. So let's say the Causeway connection was to expand. It went from UC Davis to the new campus downtown along Capitol Mall, to the Med Center, and then to the campus at 6000 J Street. In a cost-sharing agreement there, both campuses, UCD and CSUS, could pay for the operating cost of the Causeway Classic connection, and the operating costs of the transit agencies in the MOU.
Your time is
Yeah.
expired.
There would be no bearing of operating costs
Thank you, Michael.
on the transit
I
operator.
think we get the idea of the shared cost, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that needs to be explored.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other public comment?
Sorry, Brian.
I don't see any online. All right. Board directors? All right. This is really informational.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah, I really appreciate all the work that you've done to create all of these documents and going through them thoroughly and leaving us with, a lot of knowledge, but a lot of questions of where we need to go in the future. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm happy it's helpful and it's good timing because we're gonna go into budget. So it'll be fresh.
And I bet you're really glad you're done.
I am really
That
glad
document.
I'm done.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah.
Well, with that, unless there's any other comments, we're gonna adjourn this meeting, but before we adjourn the meeting, I want to recognize that it's Women's History Month, and this is a room full of women leaders, women committed to transportation, women committed to education, to healthcare, to making a better community for all. And I just want to give you props that I get to sit amongst you. So thank you. Yeah, thank you. Good job. All right. Meeting is adjourned at 8:31, and we look forward to seeing you on April 13th.